Welcome to another episode of the Travis Perry Show. I'm your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today, I have a real treat for all of you, a good friend of mine, Trevor Blondeel. He's a professional speaker, certified executive coach, and the founder of Manufacturing Greatness. After 25 years on the shop floor and in plant leadership, he now works with manufacturing leaders at companies like Nestle, Nucor, and Magna to build teams that perform under pressure and stick around. He hosts the Manufacturing Greatness podcast and is the author of the upcoming book by the same name, built around 3 conversations every leader needs to have, but most never do. Trevor, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. Travis Perry.
Yeah, absolutely. So cool. I love connecting with my heroic public speaking friends out there. I know some of you have been on my show and I've been on yours, and it's such a great honor to connect with you and learn from you. Tell us, how did you go from shop floor to now being an executive coach for business leaders all over the place?
Oh, there's a point, Travis, where I was running the plants, but trying to also be a good family man, as you and I have talked about, and the importance of balancing that, which I learned a lot from you. But before I met you, I was struggling with that a lot. And I just remember being at the skating rink, my daughter doing figure skating, and the laptop open, and then all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, Dad, it's time to go." And I kind of look up and I missed it, right? It was a practice, but it was just that memorable moment of what am I doing? Right. That's when I kind of started leaning in and saying, learning more about emotional intelligence, self-awareness. And, I got those old leathery shop floor boots, but my feet were still in them, right, when I'm at the rink. And that was one of the first times I kind of realized that this isn't who I want to be. This isn't actually who I am. It's just the behaviors that I started to follow because, we were saving lives. We thought we were, but we're making parts, right? And then I just started to get disconnected from that. So that kind of started my journey on the whole self-development, mindfulness. I started meditating, started reading more, and really started looking at how am I showing up, and I talk about people's perceptions versus my intentions, and I had a disconnect.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Appreciate you being vulnerable and telling us a little bit about your backstory there. And I'm glad that something that we've talked about or has stuck a little bit about balance, and you're thinking about meditation. And I find that a lot of business owners, they reach back to a point, something that's been a catalyst for them. And that's kind of what you described. This catalyst, this moment that is very clear. And it's likely that you've had some other thoughts subconsciously, but maybe you've pushed them aside. Maybe you just ignored them for a bit. But for whatever reason, having that wake up call, that slap in the face per se, really helped you to kind of get going, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I started to become a better leader, but I still struggled at home. And so in 2016, within 3 months, I ended up quitting my job of, almost 20 years, got divorced, moved countries, started a business, all in a lot of debt because I was trying to, fix my marriage by just giving more financially, right? More trips, fancier stuff, right? And I was just chasing something that wasn't there. So that was that whole, I had so many different of those moments, Travis, and that was the big one, right? Where I was okay, I wasn't talking to my parents as much because of conflict, within family, and it was just not liking who I am, how I do today, right? And when I say that, I say I know I have faults, but I've just made some hard choices because I knew I was in the wrong spot, right? And it was okay, you're happy when you're just yourself, right? And there's that balance of, being yourself and then understanding how other people are going to experience you. And I think that turned into my model of work, my model of life, and just kind of who I am. And I think that I just leaned into manufacturing because that's what I knew. And I've been in all those shoes that you're trying to manage a family, but then you're also got a career, and I think you can have both. I know you can have both, and I know you do. So you're a great role model of that.
Well, thank you. And you're exactly right. I've interviewed thousands of business owners who have figured out how to have both in a very, healthy way. And, it sounds like you've gone through quite the struggle, quite a internal battle there, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, even as you
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yep.
Which when we make change, a lot of people think, "Oh, I'm just going to make change in this one area of your life." That's not how it works.
No.
Human development tells us it's very clear. Like if you make a financial change, well, it's likely going to affect your health, and it might affect your physical and mental health. And then, well, how does that emotionally change who you are and relationally? Like it eventually will touch all aspects of life. So I appreciate you sharing this. What kind of niche are you in right now? What are the businesses? You talked about some of the big businesses that you've been helping, but who do you help now, and what is it that they're really struggling with?
Hmm. That's a subtitle of my book, which is "Build Teams That Work Together, Get Results, and Stick Around." And that is a subtitle because that's what we struggle with. And it's just that whole, it requires more conversations. And I talk about these three gaps that are, my framework, but it's kind of my framework in life too, right? Because as you know, I've had some struggles with my son, and he had some drinking problems, and we had some relationship problems, and now he's 5 years sober, and he's going to school, and he's now in university. He's got a part-time job as a caseworker at a rehabilitation place, and him and I still have some headbutts once in a while, but like we also kind of like three questions, right? Like, how am I showing up? And that's that first gap, right? So it's like, what are you taking from this conversation when I start to feel that conflict, right? And then the other one is, so my dad passed away just this year, and he moved in with my mom. And so, now we've got these different roles, right? And he's there, but I live in Kentucky, but I'm back to Canada like every other week, or like I'm spending more time in Canada now because of that. And it's like, so if we get into an argument, maybe it's about her medication or just something. It's like, well, what were you expecting from me? And here's what I was expecting from you. And I find if we can have those conversations up front of what do we expect from each other after we understand how we're showing up. So like, am I showing up with judgment, or am I showing up with curiosity? And I know that you're doing your best, right? Like you're a 27-year-old living with your grandmother. Like, come on, like I got to give you some credit there, right? And then we give that credit, we clear up the expectations, and then accountability, right? Then we got to follow through what we say we're going to do. And I think those three conversations are what's important. I use my son's example, but that resonates with manufacturing owners who are the main people I'm talking to, because I look at manufacturing's like a chocolate fountain. Everybody on this listening can think about fondue, right? And you think about a nice fondue, and you got some pineapple or banana, but no matter where you dip it in that fountain, the chocolate tastes about the same, right? So the chocolate's only as good as coming out of the top. So that's why I focus a lot of time with the top leadership, because those behaviors trickle down the organization. And so if we can do better at the top, as the father of our family, as the general manager or the owner of a manufacturing plant, it'll trickle down, and everyone will be better because of it. So I think that's where this book's written for, and my goal, right, is that manufacturing can be a place that Travis is going to say to his kids, hey, yeah, maybe a manufacturing would be a good career. But we want to know that it's a place where we can grow, that we can work together, that we're going to want to stick around, and it's safe.
Yeah. Hey, well, I mean, you know manufacturing, and you know their concerns. It sounds like you've done a lot of work here. You have a specialty, and yeah, I mean, exactly. I've got kids that are, adults now, and they're looking at what do they do for work, and they may have a career ambition, but I know one of them is right now, at least short term, he's working in manufacturing so that he can, get to the the dental job, and so I think there's some there's absolutely some concerns for families, but also for these business owners who are really focused in on their team,
Mm-hmm.
because their team is the business, right?
Yes.
This is their business. That's wonderful that you're able to help them. You dropped some nuggets there that is more kind of in the framework that I want to dive into, but those things you mentioned, accountability, perception, these are universal for any business owner. So while you speak to, manufacturing business owners, probably not a whole lot in my audience are manufacturing business owners. That said, why bring Trevor on? Because of his experience and his ability to make these principles known as he speaks, as he writes. It's so important for us as we're building our businesses to think about our own teams at home and at work. And a little plug for my book, Marry and Grow Rich. If you haven't picked it up, marryandgrowrichbook.com. I talk about this. This is the next level. This is how you grow. So I think our conversation is crucial because, Marry and Grow Rich, yes, that's great. Focus on your relationship. However, if you're not showing up at the recitals, at the practices, and you're on the laptop and you're being that, the example at home, like you were just talking about, like, how is that affecting your family? But if you're disconnected at work because of family issues, which we all have them, welcome to life.
Mm-hmm.
This is Earth.
This is
Here we go.
This
is humanity, right? This is the experience. Embrace it. But if we're disconnected at work because we have all these things happening at home, how are we showing up as leaders in our work to our industry, whoever is our clients, our teammates? So this is just vital because you can grow with your team at work and you can grow at home at the same time. I am 100% a believer that this is absolutely possible. I've interviewed so many business owners on this, and it is about, making the mindset shift. So let's talk about your framework for making teams really, really powerfully work together here. Maybe unpack some of those principles that you talked about. What is it that you teach these business owners that have been super impactful for them?
Yeah, the one that we start with is just how we show up, because that impacts on how people feel, and how we make people feel determines the extent of which they can engage with you and your company. And we underestimate the impact of our words, right? And our facial expressions and our timing. And we get focused on what we want to communicate, and we lose sight of what we want them to experience and receive. And just like our friend AJ Harper talks about, a book is not about someone, it's for someone. But when you speak, you already know a lot of what's going to come out of your mouth. So it's not for you, right? It's for somebody else. Maybe you're talking through something, but usually if we can start shifting that mindset of like, how am I making that person feel? Like the one person, when he said something pretty abrupt to his maintenance manager. I'm kind of like, what's that all about? And it's like, well, he's got some performance issues. I said, huh, with what you said there, he might feel like he's going to get fired. And he's kind of like, oh, good. Because, I'll keep him on his toes. I said, well, hold on a minute. No, like it won't. It'll actually retract him from his creativity, put him into a fear-based. And you're intentionally doing that, thinking you're going to get a positive outcome. So it's just, but when we're in the moment, we're not thinking about that, right? We want to push harder and we want to drive and we want to get the results. But then people don't stick around and they don't work together, and you're not getting creative ideas and people aren't taking risks. And so it's just really kind of like, hey, ask the question, right? Like, how, if you don't think it's landing, like, how's this going? Like, how's this conversation going? Like, am I helping you right now, or I'm just irritating you? Like, how are you going to walk away from this conversation? We need to make a shift here, because I know sometimes this vein in Trevor's head will sometimes pop up when I get really excited, and that's probably not helpful to you. So let's talk about like what's going to help you in this situation. So that's kind of like, that's why I got written behind me, right? What are your intentions versus people's perceptions? Because I might just say, hey, listen, I'm intending, to just learn more about what were you thinking when that happened. The way you're answering, it's like maybe I'm making you feel like you feel threatened. And if that's the way you feel, let's talk about that first, because I don't want you to feel that way.
Well said. Well said. So just showing up, just the what a coach of mine a long time ago, Doug Carter, used to say is your way of being. Your way of being is what comes across, right? So if your way of being is something that involves like what is your intention versus what's perceived, then obviously that can be the disconnect. That clearly there's a disconnect between those two paradigms. Like I wanted to perform, but I'm going to use fear. So what would you say is the one thing in this framework that would help business owners the most if they could focus on one principle that would allow them to change their way of being, change the way that they show up? What have you found, and what do you teach, what do you coach, is the most important principle about all of that?
So if you're listening and you got a team, you probably chose that team, right? You probably chose the people that are working for you. So I think if anything, if we can just kind of remember that. And I got the heroic t-shirt on, I showed you earlier, Travis, before the show started, and it says yes and, right? And that's kind of like the in a conversation of speaking, we say yes and to keep the conversation going. And so my t-shirt is going to say be curious. Because if you remember that the people that work for you are your people that you're responsible for, and something doesn't go right, I know that's a good person. And I've seen good behavior, right? I've seen good habits. I wonder what else could be going on, right? And just like what's beneath that problem on the surface. So it might be you might be seeing a late report. You might be saying a deliverable to one of your clients that didn't get delivered the way you expected. But if we kind of shift our framework of like, well, why wasn't it done? To like, that's funny because Travis is a great dude and that's not like him. So I wonder what else is going on with Travis that would cause that to happen. And that whole curiosity, that attitude is kind of that foundation. So when I'm just talking to people, it's just kind of like when you feel that frustration, it's just like take a breath, think about that person and what else could be going on.
Not only is this good advice, this is good psychology. Trevor, you and I were talking before about my deep dive into psychology lately and how that's really been helpful. I've published several podcasts about this and getting to a level 3, a level 4 awareness of other people and kind of getting into their subconscious. One of the key aspects to that actually is curiosity. And as someone who has interviewed thousands of individuals, if I showed up with, a boring, tired face and like, okay, tell me about your business, Trevor. What's going on in life? Like, okay, I've heard it all. Like the way that comes across is absolutely horrible, right? Nobody's going to care. But if I'm like, Trevor's the most exciting person in my life, and I am so curious about his insights and what he's doing, then the whole messaging changes, right? And people feel that. They feel that. Versus, a managerial type of approach of push them down so that they'll, work really hard. I love that you're being curious. And I want that t-shirt. That sounds awesome. Like be
Definitely
curious.
send you one.
Because that is definitely a reminder.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we start telling people what to do, they already know what they need to do. Like most people, unless they're really, really say, well, I don't know what I need to do. Well, then you can teach them. But most people know what they need to do. They just are unsure. They're afraid. They have guilt. They are shamed. They're feeling blamed. They're not they don't feel worthy, they don't have the motivation to do it, a lot of it is these negative emotions. So if you can get super curious, you can help them uncover what emotion is keeping them from taking that action. And you're right, might be right. The first thing I thought of is like, when you get curious, maybe there was a death in the family. Maybe you don't even know. Maybe his wife kicked him out. Maybe his daughter had a really bad day and she was bullied at school, and that's the only thing he can think about right now.
Yeah.
And as a dad, like, well, what am I going to do about this, right? And
yeah.
so we don't know what's going on in people's lives, but typically what I've found is you're exactly right. When you get really curious, you can get deep really quick, but you can't show up expecting them to tell you that without making them the most curious person in the world. So I love this. How does one, and how do you teach, how does one develop that curiosity? For people like you and me, maybe it's something just like, oh yeah, we're born with it. I would say no, I have to develop that. Like I've had to develop it. So for you, like, how do you tell business leaders to develop that curiosity?
Yeah, I think it's just when we step back and look at what's the outcome we're really looking for, right? Like if we look at what's the outcome, what's your purpose, what's your why, and for your business, right? Like what's that coming out, and then is your behavior serving that purpose, right? So like I've got lots of stories, Travis, where Trevor was not making good choices in how he showed up, right? Sometimes I was just mimicking behaviors of my bosses. They put more pressure on me. I put more pressure on them. I thought that was what I was supposed to do. I didn't have other tools. And I stopped. So I came in curious and I lost some of that curiosity, right? Because then I started to fall into just the system, right? Of just accountability without worrying how we showed up or making expectations clear. And this is where I'll think a little bit different on what you just said earlier when we talked about, in general, people know their job. Well, I can tell you that maybe that's something that you should question. Do they know their job? In the fact of what you expect, because that's our second gap, is the expectation gap. Because I've gone into these larger companies, and which are usually, like, probably a lot of your listeners are smaller companies. And I can tell you right now, listener, you're probably doing a much better job than a lot of the corporations. That's the advantage we have as smaller business owners, is because we can have those, conversations of, like, if you think they should just know, that's the moment. Like, okay, that's a trigger. That thought just came in my head. These thoughts are okay as long as we don't let them come over our mouth. So if we're thinking, well, Travis should just know this. And if I can just stop and think, what does good look like to Travis? Because if I think this job is done when it turns on and it runs, or if that's what the person installing it or whatever is working on it, and then they're done. But my expectation is the floor is clean, the boxes are put away, things are labeled. That's what done looks like to me. So instead of getting upset, because I hear senior leaders or owners, and they'll say, "Oh, people just want more clarity. They're just not listening." I say, well, I don't know, because usually when I get the two people in the room, and I'll say, Travis, what does done look like to you? What does good look like? And over here, Trevor. Okay, so what about you? What did you think that looked like? Oh, okay. Well, if that's what you were thinking, I can do that. And usually people want to meet your expectations, boss. So yeah, when we have that conversation, it's like, okay, well now it's just you and me having a conversation, and then the problem's over here. We're not arguing person to person. We're just talking about what we want as this outcome.
Yeah. So leading curiosity into what is it that you're expecting, kind of an introspective look at action with your team, seems to be kind of this natural flow of where we go next. How does one get really clear about that? I mean, I've heard lots of systems around this of like having, really clear handbooks or really clear manuals or whatever that might be, trainings, constant training. What do you suggest is maybe that next step for corporations or for business owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's that next step to make these expectations understood, really clear, so that there is a place for them to fall back on?
Or you're singing some of the language of manufacturing. Like we like standard work, like the military, right? Like we like
Standard operating procedures, right?
Yeah. I mean, we all like that until we start using that as an excuse, right? Where it's kind of like, well, they signed off on it. They signed off on those standard operating procedures. We should write them up now because they didn't follow it. It's kind of like, hold on, time out here. So we're still people. And even if it's on a document, we may interpret things a little bit differently. Now, if there's things that you can do in your business, which are standard, like, hey, this is the form. This is how I want to see the form. And when our clients fill it out, it's got to be filled out this way. And this is what good looks like. Okay, those are some stuff. I mean, those are some items that we can get more specific on. But we can't skip the conversation, Travis, right? We're still, like you said, we're still people. We still have perceptions. We still have, like, probably learn from you on, like, maybe previous thoughts that maybe hold us back from thinking of what we're capable of. Does Travis have the confidence? Like, does he think that he can actually do this? Because I want to have that conversation with him, because even though that expectation is there. So I think it's just, it's good to have that written baseline, but it doesn't take the place of a conversation around clarity, right? About just, what does good look like, and having that, like, there's a friend of mine, an author, Monica Rothgary. She wrote a book. She was an executive at Taco Bell, but she was in the military, and then she started running stores, Taco Bell stores, and progressed the organization. But, like, she has a great story about, like, cleaning green onions, right? Like, green onions are really hard to clean. And they actually took it off the menu at Taco Bell because of just this clarity around what does a clean green onion look like. Because depending on how your house is clean versus mine, we can have different ideas of clean. So we still need to have conversations and, like, good visuals. And so, I mean, there's just so many different examples, but, like, I think about her example there because she realized that person's, was a little bit different on their thoughts around what good looked like. But once they had the conversation, they went through it together. Hey, it's okay.
Yeah. This is great because this ongoing training, if we just have a manual or a standard operating procedure, guide, handbook, whatever you want to call it, but there's never a conversation between those employees, then over time it could break down. Things could go awry, and now you don't have clean green onions, which is a great example of this. I'm big on this conversation idea, and I tell a lot of my clients, like, hey, great, now you've got a standard operating procedure, you're delegating to people. How often are you communicating with them? How often are you having these conversations? And I have a standard rule. If you're going to meet daily, then make it a 5-10 minute meeting.
Yes.
If you're going to meet weekly, okay, maybe it's half hour or hour-ish. If you're going to meet monthly, it's going to be 2 or 3 hours, right? Because you've got to play catch up with a lot of things. So the more that you meet, the more that it's actually a productive meeting, very specific on this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this case, right? So I'm with you. Like, this lines up with so much of what I teach business owners about how they interact. Because, I'm a big focus on, like, do what's in your wheelhouse, do it better than anybody else, and then delegate or automate or even delete everything else that doesn't need to be done. But if you're delegating out to a human, then there's always going to be mistakes. There's always going to be misunderstanding. There's always going to be perceptions and expectations that aren't met. So we've got to keep training. We have to keep meeting. We have to keep that contact with our team members. And so, that's kind of a call out. Like, if you're not doing this, if you're not having these conversations, I 100% recommend exactly what Trevor is saying to do and to keep that communication working. I love this conversation, my friend, and I know we could be doing this for hours and hours. I know you've got a new book coming out that goes into more detail about all of this. why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the book and where, I know it's in process, it's in progress, but do you have a way that they can connect with you so they can follow along with your journey here?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube, I'm on LinkedIn, and I got the podcast, but I do have a newsletter. It is specific for manufacturing, but I'm going to have a different one that's going to just tie into the book more, that people are just more interested in that. But really, it's that third gap is accountability, and if you've done everything that we've done today, I believe that accountability builds trust, and when we're transparent and we've got good expectations, and that we're curious about how we're showing up, running your business gets to be more enjoyable, collaborative, and it's just productive, right? Like it's like, hey, we've got these outside life, we've got our business, and we can just kind of follow those models. It just makes all the difference. So yeah, and I appreciate that, Travis, of like the model can work for anybody. Just most of my stories are more manufacturing, but that's why I talk a lot about my son and my daughter, because I've made a lot of mistakes as a dad, and I've made a lot of behavior corrections to be better than I was before. And that's, between that and good faith and, our belief in a higher power and
Absolutely.
doing the meditation and taking care of ourselves, like you talk about spiritually and physically and emotionally, you're going to have a great business. And no, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I appreciate you throwing in the accountability concept and talking about it, as it we could, again, spend hours just on that point. But yeah, connect with Trevor. And, I'd love to see that newsletter that's focused on the book as it's coming out, and watch your YouTubes. And I know we're connected on LinkedIn as well. But connect and find him there on these social accounts. We'll have links to that down below. Trevor, before we go, I'd like to add this into my podcast interviews now. As a business owner who now trains other big corporations, you're training executives, you're training leaders. What have you learned about strong mental health and its corollary with business health, and even, as you've been mentioning, your ability to have great relationships?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to, you were talking a little bit before on, you're the same person all day long. Because I get, you probably heard this, where it's like, oh, well, I'm like that at work, but when I'm at home, I'm like this, right? And so I realize that that's not true. We're the same spirit and soul all day long. And people really want to know who you are, because some people are like, well, I don't want everyone to get to know me, I'm not really social. Well, it's not really about that. It's about just being kind, because I think we're naturally kind, and then sometimes our behavior is just unkind because we're not present in the moment. So two of my biggest core values are like being present and then being authentic. And like, so for the podcast today, like I had a little bit of buffer in between, before our podcast, because like I want to be totally present when I'm talking to Travis's audience in this privilege to be on your show. And I don't think I even today, I still struggle sometimes, but I try to create more margins of realizing that if I can step back off the dance floor, or maybe off the shop floor, and, and be on the balcony a little bit more, right? And kind of look that higher level, like what's really important. Am I focused on those little small problems? And when I do that, I'm usually not taking care of myself as much. I'm pretty good at my sleep. I get close to 8 hours every night, because I know that's got to happen. My eating is probably better than it's ever been. And then exercise is really good. But I think what I still need to work on is just having times where I'm not doing anything. It's just where I go for a walk and not with a phone, like, so I think that's the area that I still got to work on. And these other anchors are good, but it's a journey, right, Travis? Like, aren't we all kind of just working on it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, having that white space on your calendar to prepare, having the time to meditate and pray, to be really clear with your values. Like that's, I mean, you're knocking it out of the park at this point, buddy. I mean, that my first book is all about this. Like how do we have greater balance? Well, it's a psychological journey and a spiritual journey. So most of us have some kind of limiting beliefs and thoughts and fears that we're struggling with subconsciously that we need to really clear out. And absolutely, meditation, prayer can be a very great help to all this. So I appreciate being real. I appreciate you showing up authentic. I appreciate your stories, your help. Anything last you'd like to leave with the audience before we wrap up today?
Hey, just, next time you get into that situation where you feel that judgment mind coming up, just take that breath, be curious.
Nice. Be curious. I love it. So good to have you on the show, Trevor. You knocked it out of the park. I love these conversations, and I'm looking forward to your book coming out soon enough for us to jump on that and follow along with your journey. So definitely do that. Follow Trevor Blondeel wherever you want, their YouTube, LinkedIn, his newsletter, etc. And we'll definitely be in touch. Trevor, thank you for being on the show. And as always, you're lighting it up. You're inspiring people to be better. So thank you for being here, buddy.
Thanks for having me.